Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and this is my review of Savage Dog with Scott Adkins, directed by Jesse V. Johnson, and The Debt Collector, but with Scott Adkins, directed by Jesse V. Johnson. So, I was out of town, I don't know, like a month or so ago, and I caught Ninja, Shadow of a Tear, Ninja 2 with Scott Adkins. And I really liked it, although I did this weird fan edit where I kept falling asleep. I saw it at 2 in the morning. Every time there was a non-action scene, I would fall asleep and then wake up at the next action scene. But in my mind, I didn't realize I was falling asleep. So I woke up and I was like, man, I saw this movie. It was 90% action. It was so cool. But no, it's, there were a lot of action scenes in Ninja 2, but it's not 90%. So then I ended up watching it 2 weeks later, and I did like it. So I said, hey, this Scott Adkins, tell me about him. Actually, I've had his movies recommended to me because people said, oh, we know the type of movies you like, and you'd like this, but he looked kind of boring. I grew up in the 80s, and there was something kind of silly about all of the action stars, which made them endearing. They'd have a really thick accent, or obviously you had Arnold with the over-the-top muscles and accent, and then you had Stallone with the slur and the accent, and then you had Jean-Claude Van Damme with the accent and the knot on his head, and even Steven Seagal. You had the busted hairline and the ponytail, and he was super arrogant, but he kind of sucked. So Scott Adkins always just kind of looked like an underwear model to me. And I saw him. I saw him in small parts of things. Doctor Strange, Expendables 2. I was like, big deal. But so when I reviewed Ninja 2, I said, recommend. I like this movie. Recommend more movies like this. And it was very interesting because then people started recommending, and I guess he's done multiple movies with the same directors, Isaac Florentine, who did Ninja, and then this other guy named Jesse V. Johnson. And if IMDb is correct, it looks like they did 5 movies in a row over 2.5 years. So I watched Savage Dog first. That one, actually, I tried to watch this movie called Triple Threat, which some people call a Scott Adkins movie, but as far as I could tell, he was just in a little bit of it, probably as a favor to a friend. It was Tony Jaa and this other guy. It didn't seem very good. It was one of those ones where it's soldiers, they're tough soldiers in the jungle, but nobody has any sweat. Their uniforms are obviously brand new and just from an Army Navy store, and they always shoot their guns. They hold their guns like they're bass guitars, they're all down by their waist. And it's oh geez, I can't watch this. So then I watched Savage Dog because I was something Indochina, okay, Vietnam, all right, cool. So Savage Dog was pretty good. Debt Collector was freaking insane. There are going to be a lot of spoilers in the review of these two movies, so I recommend both of them. I recommend. Oh, and then I did. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I watched Avengement, and that was Scott Adkins and Jesse Johnson as well. I believe Jesse Johnson writes or co-writes most of this movies he directs. So Avengement was a freaking masterpiece. So in the order that they did them, I think it was Savage Dog, and then it was Triple Threat, and then it was then it was Debt Collector, then it was Avengement. So Savage Dog is about it's in Indochina, French Indochina, Vietnam, in the 1950s. It's after the French left, but before the Americans are there, and so it's kind of chaotic. And there's a guy named something cool. He had a cool guy name. It's Scott Adkins, and he's in a jail. He ends up getting freed and then working at a bar. This is I would call pretty low budget. So I've watched a couple of Scott Adkins movies, and I think most of these movies are $1 or $2 million. And I gotta tell you, there is a huge difference between a $1 million movie and a $2 million movie. It's astounding how much of a difference there is. So Savage Dog is clearly in the, low budget action movie. Almost all of it takes place in a few locations or sets. There's this kind of like a grotto. It's got all these different levels. It's actually really cool. It's not a set. It looks like they just found this location. So there's a lot of fights there. There's a bar. There's a headquarters for the bad guy. It was a classic. Someone done me wrong, I'm going to get revenge. I think probably the coolest thing is some pretty good fights, and then also just the 1950s French Indochina setting was cool. It is one of those movies where the main character is getting revenge, and then you realize he kind of forgot the people he's getting revenge for. It also has a weird thing where it's being narrated by a ghost, and the deal is there have been movies since the beginning of movies where a ghost narrates it, but the deal is usually the narrator is kind of consistently throughout the movie. If I remember correctly, the ghost narrator is in the beginning. Then he kind of disappears till the middle of the movie, and then he is heavily narrating. Like sometimes there's just Scott Adkins like walking through the forest looking for people, and it's basically like, I don't know, like a when they used to do the adaptations of like Disney movies, like The Black Hole, and the narrator would describe entire scenes. So it was like that. It is a little weird one where I might have missed it. But, usually you do, like, the minions and then the enforcer, like, the toughest guy who guards the main villain, and then you kill the main villain. But they did it kind of all out of order, and unless I missed something, then they spend, like, the last 15 minutes chasing down, like, the number 2 or 3 minion, who does have a pretty good fight. But I just felt like the rhythms of this were off. There was also things that were just cheap, like Keith David, he's this guy called Valentine, he runs a bar, and like the bar is like lit like your kitchen, like it's so freaking bright. I know it was supposed to seem really like smoky and grungy, but it just felt like just really, really bright. And then I noticed little weird things about lower budget movies, is that there's things where they would have done a different take, and then they just don't do it because they don't have the budget. Like there's a bad guy, he calls himself the Enforcer, and he gives a little speech before he kills people, and he tries to act like he's being fair, but he goes, except for this knife, we are very well matched. So he's like always cheating. He has this gigantic knife. So at one point he's the guy with the knife, and even if you like knock the knife out of one hand, he'll catch it with the other. So finally Scott Adkins's character kicks the knife out of his hand, but like you barely notice, like it kind of gets blocked by their bodies, and then they cut to the knife. Like in a higher budget movie, they would have reshot it because they're like, we need to see it really clearly fly out of his hand because that's a big moment. And then like this might seem really minor, but I really noticed it at one point. They both they're chasing each other, and then you find out that they're both out of bullets. One tries to shoot one, and then his gun's empty. And then he throws it onto a bunk. It goes onto the bunk, and then it bounces and goes out the door. And I was like, you wouldn't see that in a big budget movie. They would want something more like he would throw it onto the bed, and it would land on the bed, and then they would show a shot of it, close up of it landing on the bed. When it bounced out of frame through a doorway, I was like, what? But pretty cool. I mean, I noticed little low budget things. One guy can fight 50 people because he has the coolest hair, I guess. I don't know. It was very kind of A-Team at the end, where he starts taking down all these mercenaries. Here's one thing that's really cool. I don't know if you noticed this, if you watched both Savage Dog and The Debt Collector. So they got this Nazi who has a kid with this Vietnamese woman, and they've got a picture, and it plays a very prominent role in the story. He's got a daughter who he's not claiming, but it's his daughter. And later in, so that was set in the 50s, and then you got a movie set 70 years later, basically right now, The Debt Collector, and it's the same photo, and it's the same actor. So you're like, is this the grandson of that guy, it would actually work out pretty well. I was like, whoa, that's cool. I might be the only person in the world who noticed that. So it was good. It was solid. A little cheap, and like the story, like the rhythms were kind of off. Now, just 2 years later, that same team is doing freaking masterpieces like Avengement, and Debt Collector was awesome. So Debt Collector is pretty much what it sounds like. It's this guy who he runs a karate dojo. He's not making a lot of money, which from what I know about friends who are into martial arts, that's very standard. Every karate dojo, usually the guy has like a full-time job and he does it in his free time, or like it just, I mean, think about it. You get like 20 students and they pay like $30 a month. Like you gotta get insurance. You gotta pay for like most people do not make money teaching martial arts. So he's this guy. He's down on his luck. He's got a friend. There's a great scene at one point where some kind of minor league gangsters are trying to not really strong her arm. I think they want the location. So they're like, hey, we'll pay off your lease for $10,000. He's like, $10,000? That's like nothing. I can't start over my life for $10,000. And then Scott Adkins. So now I'm talking about the Debt Collector. So then Scott Adkins is like, okay, here's the deal. Let's fight. And then if you win, I'll sign my lease over to you. And if I win, you leave me alone. And the funny thing is, this guy's like, wait, like a kung fu movie? I usually don't like meta stuff, but that made me laugh really hard. So he beats him, but then he's still poor and he's still going to lose his place. So he's got, I couldn't tell if it was like an assistant instructor or just one of his top students. So he's like, hey, so he's like, so he ends up working. He's like, you're going to go collect some debts. So then it basically becomes like a standard, buddy movie. You got Luis Mandalore, who I know his brother. I didn't really know about him. Freaking awesome actor. Like, why isn't this guy a bigger deal? Like, why isn't he like a Bruce Willis type of star? That blows my mind. So he's the older debt collector named Sue. And then they got the younger one named French. And so French, Scott Adkins, he's being shown the ropes. One of the things I liked about this movie is it goes for like a good hour where it's basically episodic. They just go from situation to situation, collecting debts, and some crazy things happen. And then at the end, like in the last 30 minutes, it turns into basically an Elmore Leonard novel or movie. Like it goes from like a good solid B movie to like legitimately excellent. So spoilers, go see both of these movies, but definitely see The Debt Collector. I looked it up because I saw that Jesse V. Johnson, he constantly does movies with Scott Adkins. So I see they've got The Debt Collector 2. And y'all need to explain that to me, because if I remember correctly, Luis Mandalore took like 5 7.62 rounds straight through the chest, and Scott Adkins took 2. They looked like fatal wounds. I'm guessing he just got a good reaction, but I don't care. I don't care. Patched him up. 6 months later, they got out of the hospital. Whatever. Or there was actually room. I was even thinking it might be set during the events of the first movie. There could have been like a whole nother little side quest that could have happened. So we will see. I think it's just going to be, we got shot, but we're better now. So anyway, I find this very exciting. I always like getting into new things. So this whole thing with Jesse V. Johnson and Scott Adkins, and then Scott Adkins and Isaac Florentine, I'm really, really excited. So basically all of their movies that are on Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, they're in my watch list. It actually looks like all of them are. Like, there aren't any that I have to pay for. They're either on one or the other. So tell me which one you want me to watch next. I think I am going to give that Triple Threat just because I want to be like a Jesse Johnson completist. But tell me what you think about these movies. I'm always looking for recommendations. I love this genre and this style. So thanks for watching. And I think I'm going to watch Star Trek Tom Hardy is Patrick Stewart, whatever the hell that one's called. Whatever. Thanks for watching. Bye.